Hello everyone. Please be comfortable. The talk, the subject matter today, isn't new to anyone, or shouldn't be, and it's a timeless matter. It seems to be a great concern to many right now, because there is a tremendous influx of messages coming from all directions. Oh, the other day the National Enquirer had 17 advertisements for books, all purporting to be metaphysical, mystical, occult, or just plain old good luck, and for talismans and good luck ointments and all that sort of thing. But the books promised everything metaphysically, from immediate and long-lasting health to riches, to one's ability to control anyone he liked, to a better memory. One even offered sex prowess, metaphysically induced. Well, now, just had a letter from my dearest friend, Marion, who is presently in California, and she tells me that California is simply awash with new gurus, new teachers, new theories, new ideas, and that everyone is busily running from one to the other. And of course, this is the thing that induces the question I'm asked so often: how do we know whom to listen to? How do we know whom to study? How do we know there isn't going to be a little bit of truth in this or that or something else? I had a young lad once ask me about whether or not he should go to India and study there. And I encouraged him to go. That was Hinduism. He went, saw the light. The light developed and grew apace, and he's now about his father's business. Another lad asked me about the possibility of studying with someone in India. In Hong Kong. And I said, by all means. Another, to study with someone in Japan, to attend a particular ashram in Japan, and I said, by all means go. Well, I've been asked how I can include all of these ideas. Someone else wanted to take Christian Science class instruction under a Mr. So-and-so, and I said, well, by all means, yes, if you can get in the class without waiting 5 years. And if you can't get in his class, then there are other classes you can get in. So the question arises, and the point of the first part of our talk now will be, how do we know whom to listen to? Which pathway should we follow? Pathway. Pathway. The bird up there laughs with us. There is no pathway to the goal when one's standing on it, when one's sitting on it, when one's breathing it. The goal is right here, right where one is. Oh, I don't mean here with Bill Samuel, that after your pilgrimage here to Alabama that you found the goal and that you had a pathway here. No way, that's not what I mean. There is no way there to light, enlightenment, but to be light and enlightenment. But I'm getting ahead of myself now. Let me point out a few things that perhaps you haven't thought about. whatever path one travels, and I hate to use that word path, but what can I do? That's how it seems. It seems we start out as a very ignorant, stupid mortal, and we carry this ignorant, stupid mortal along, acquiring wisdom from this teacher or that one, and we walk a very, very long pathway in our attempt to arrive at some light, real light, genuine light, honest light, something that will really do what it's supposed to do. And but in any event, whatever path one travels, Eastern, Western, heathen, for Pete's sake, mystical or occult, secret, it can be voodoo, or it can be metaphysical. It can be a scientific metaphysics, or it can be a religious metaphysics. But now listen, all of them produce, in their most effective moments, all of these pathways, all of these systems, all of these philosophies produce in their very best moments an experience that is identical. Now, who will deny this? The mystical experience that comes from Zen Buddhism, when it has been written of and spoken of, is an identical utterance. When it comes from a Taoist, or whether it comes from a Catholic, one of the early Catholics of the Christian Church, or one of the latter-day Catholics, the mystical experience would appear always to be the same. Now, a scenario for all of this goes a little bit like this. Whatever pathway one chooses, the pathway itself, either intentionally or unintentionally, and usually unintentionally, brings the disciple. Let's call the one who walks the pathway a disciple. It brings one to a place where he simply gives up. Now, why does he give up? Everyone doesn't give up, but everyone who has the mystical experience gives up. And perhaps it's the frustration of the pathway, in that it fails to live up to its promises. Or it could be that the pathway promised great health and wealth and joy and that sort of thing, and it worked initially. But then as the years grind on, as a lot of Christmases go by and a lot of New Years arrive, it would seem that the joints grow stiff and the back gets stiff and the eyes are not quite as bright as they were, and one doesn't hear quite as well, and we say, gee whiz, the philosophy isn't working now as it did before. And so, again, there's a great giving up at that point. Or perhaps that giving up is sometimes induced by personal tribulations that are just simply too great to bear. Great depressions that settle over the humanity of us. But in any event, however it's induced, and by whatever route one is walking, traveling, studying, a turning point is reached, and a giving up takes place. I'm pointing out that the giving up is the same, whether one has gone the Buddhist route, the Zen Buddhist route, the Taoist route, or an independent route, as I guess you could say this has been for me. But in any event, one comes to a giving up place, and so the question is, giving up what? What does one give up? Well, it's always the same. Every discipline, as spoken of it, is the same giving up. It's a giving up of some degree of personal self-importance. Giving up some degree of a human sense of self, of humanhood. A surrendering, a giving up, a letting go of that old bugaboo ego. All right, a giving it up, but giving it up to whom or to what? And it seems that always the giving up is accompanied by a sense that, all right, I give up, but I yield to something greater. to something greater than this personal sense of myself that has to this point availed nothing. A yielding to, if you were a Taoist, you would say a yielding to Tao, or if a yielding to God, or if you were fundamentalist, perhaps you'd say I'm yielding to the blood of Jesus, or something like that. Or it might be you're giving up to Nellie D. Grabenbaker. But in any event, all those, by whatever discipline they've traveled, in speaking of the event and what appeared to induce it, inevitably speak of a giving up. And a giving up of a personal sense of selfhood, and a yielding, and giving it up not in despair to nothing, but giving and yielding in despair to an ineffable something. All right, now, what next in this scenario we're talking about? Whenever this yielding happens, always comes a grand sense of relief. You can read countless accounts of this relief as it's spoken of. It seems as though guilt has been lifted. It's as though darkness has been taken off, as though scales had fallen from the eyes. And whatever the discipline of the world, whatever the discipline one is following, if it is organized and has an institutional something behind it, inevitably they take credit for this grand sense of relief that follows the giving up. Well, it seems to me that, and this of course fortifies and strengthens their basis for being in a tangible world of organizations. And they take credit for this grand sense of relief that everyone feels. And of course, unfortunately, it works like this too in this scenario that we call the human experience. The disciple, feeling this sense of relief, inevitably, he or she knows that the relief is honest, that there really has been a lessening of a sense of guilt, a lessening of a sense of person or ego. And what does this do? It strengthens that one's belief in the power and the importance of the discipline or pathway he or she is walking. Well, let's talk about this feeling of relief that comes about for just a moment. We've all felt it. It's the same for all mankind. It is as physical as anything can be physical. What is physical but the means by which spiritual is made plain, and the two are one? But in any event, it is this physical feeling of relief that comes from giving up and letting go has been spoken of by countless people, again, from whatever path they came from, and usually in the same terms. It's as though something warm had been poured over him. And it drains the tensions away. It washes the guilts away. There's a physical feeling that's actually like water pouring from the fingers and toes. Now, Christianity calls this experience, which incidentally is very natural and very normal for everyone. It is not so often recognized for what it is, but when it is recognized for what it is, that experience has been called the Holy Baptism by Christianity. It's been called other things in the other disciplines. But it's always the same experience. Now, we've all experienced this sense of baptism every time we've given up and let God take charge of our affair. I don't mean given up to to do nothing, I mean give up to allow God to be in charge of our affairs and then do, under those circumstances, what that relief, that grand sense of relief allows us to see to do. All right? I would ask you to listen again, that with this grand sense of relief, what happens most often is the disciple's reaction from this honest experience will, in one way or another, turn around on him to not only reinforce the institution or pathway in his head that he has been studying, and excuse my use of a word like in his head, I can't help it, have to use words, but it not only reinforces his belief in that organization, but lo and behold, it reinforces the very old man, or the old sense of himself, who had the guilt in the first place. Now listen, it's difficult to find words to say this. Christianity does nothing, virtually nothing, nor do any of the disciplines really, to stop the self-righteousness that follows so quickly on the heels of this mystical experience that comes with yielding, simple giving up of a personal sense of self. And the very sense of ego that yields, lest we're careful, is so thrilled by the accomplishment that the thrill renews the ego rather than diminish it. And lo and behold, we're right back where we started. All right, let's carry on with this thing. With the yielding, with the giving up, which incidentally can be done right here, right now. One doesn't have to be an ego. Now, we'll explain later in this talk just precisely what the ego is and why and how it can be given up immediately without long, arduous pathways, years of meditation and study. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Let's continue with this feeling that comes along. It was spoken of as a sense of relief, and with it the feeling of having been washed clean, and from which comes the holy baptism. There's another physical feeling that very often comes with this yielding, that comes most often with an unconscious yielding. It was written of very often in the early days of each discipline, unless perhaps maybe the voodooists didn't write about it, or the independents, but those who did spoke of a grand stirring in the solar plexus, tumult in the bowels, it was spoken of, because it is so physical and sensual in nature, and because it is so often accompanied with a sense of singleness or oneness, and a sense of desirelessness. It has been referred to as, in Christianity at least, as the Holy Union. It is spoken of in the Orient as the divine intercourse. Many disciples of many of the pathways still speak of it as the divine intercourse. Now, another one of the physical things that seem to accompany this giving up, this letting go, this ending one's sense of humanhood, is a feeling. Bear in mind that all of these things, while I'm naming them one by one by one by one, and starting at the so-called lowest level of them and building up to what is supposed to be the highest of the spiritual attainments, can all happen simultaneously, and they are none totally separated from the other. There is a degree of all of them in each of them. And there is a sense of eachness in all of them. Well, another one comes as a sense of lightness, freshness, sort of like cool air. Cool, refreshing air. It's been hailed as the holy breath. sure you've heard of that in your studies. Remember now, I'm saying these great mystical experiences, none of which can be poo-pooed, and are the experiences that are a joy to experience, to be, and that are available immediately to come as wings on the feet for all of us, are the same. Any scholar can see that they are the same by way of any discipline. Now, there is a final one that's supposed to be the grandest of them all, a sense of peace and all rightness that is accompanied with almost a disorienting light, but a feeling of timeless singleness, a feeling of oneness of everything. And always with this feeling, a knowledge that peace and all rightness are the genuine and honest fact of being. The Eastern disciplines make no bone about the last one here. This one, the last one I've mentioned, as being the most significant. It speaks of the rest of them as being somewhat lower in degree. The last one is the most significant because it allows and demands, actually, a total yielding of the yielder. It calls for the demise of the one who surrenders. It ends the one walking along the pathway. There's not even a consciousness any longer of a person or a human that is struggling to climb his way up to try to get to God's belt or something. And it is highly venerated, this last experience, because it leaves a timeless sense of consciousness only on the scene. For myself, these experiences come as one experience. It seems always that there has been no interval of time between them. I don't know how else to say it, except that from one experience to the next, there is an absolute certainty that all of the human falderall in between was as though it were light slowed down or entrapped light, in which nothing really mattered. What does matter is the light-to-light experience, between which, as if it could really be interrupted, but between which all of the aging processes, all of the time processes and so forth are understood to be nothing. I might point out that the obverse of this is true. If it can seem humanly that we have a human experience that we call good, most certainly there is a delineating experience that within humanhood to make that plain. And humanly, we might call it a bad experience. I went from one bad experience to another bad experience, and it seemed that the same was true, that there had been no intervening time in between. I remember the Korean War, and 10 years earlier there had been World War II. I was in combat in both of those experiences, when after 10 years I found myself back in combat, leading troops up and down hills and doing all of the things that soldiers called on to do in combat. It seemed to me as though there had been no intervening time at all. And yet that intervening time included marriage and 2 sons and a home and an experience as a civilian and in the business world. So the obverse is true too, but the peak-to-peak experience that all of the disciplines are aiming for, the experience of peace, the peace that is beyond understanding. is the same no matter what discipline one follows. It is spoken of in the same terms, whether written by an Indian, a Jew, Christian, or a heathen, whatever a heathen is. And I'm sure the birds singing are singing of the same experience. And I know that when the wind blows, the trees tell of that experience. Okay? So much for that. The experience is induced by a frustrating letting go, or a giving up. And to whom? To God. A giving up what? A giving up of one's personal sense of self. And inevitably it is accompanied by a grand sense of relief of I am not guilty of all the sins of commission or omission. Lo and behold, everything is all right. Well, all of the garden tractors have started up, and the lawnmowers. So we've moved inside, and we're inside Woodsong now for the conclusion of our talk. I guess the simple point that has been made here is that with this study, we began with the goal of all the other disciplines. Their goal is the recognition that life, awareness itself, is identity. We began at that point. The purpose of other disciplines is to allow one that grand peace that is past understanding, that comes with letting go the personal sense of self, the one to whom awareness has been given, to simply be awareness itself, and joy in the joy of being awareness itself. We began at that point. All of our writings and all of our teachings have, for lo these many years, begun with the acceptance of God awareness, the awareness of the divine mind as the starting point, the identity as which we live and move and have our being. I have in essence said that all of the disciplines of the world, to include the metaphysical, scientific metaphysical philosophies as they are currently taught or practiced or apparently almost universally believed, began with a little speck in time and space, like a spot on a motion picture screen, that goes through all of the gyrations of study, learning, putting off, overcoming, healing, enlightenment after enlightenment, pit of hell after pit of hell, in order to one day perceive that one is not just the speck in space, the little spot on the corner of the screen, but that rather one is the entire screen itself, upon which and as which all of the scenes unfold. We identify as awareness within which all world scenes appear. Once upon a time, it was as though we identified as perhaps a bug in a garden. And lo, it was a beautiful garden. It had roses along the borders. It had violets in the center, gladiolas here and there, all of the beautiful flowers, but it also had clods and weeds and poison ivy and brambles and briars. And as an ant, we poked our way about the garden to examine first this flower and that one, to determine which was the best and which we liked and which we didn't. And then finally, in grand frustration, one day it dawned on us that we were the garden entire, and that everything in the garden, every flower, every bramble, every briar, every insect about the business of trying to find its way and make its determination, every one was garden itself. And at this point we stopped identifying as a struggling ant about the business of fighting the battle of weeds and brambles, to be garden, and to perceive that each flower in the garden was only another quality or attribute of garden itself. Now the question is it necessary to have the experience of the baptism, the experience of the light, is it necessary to have that before one can identify as awareness? The question comes, is it necessary to have the mystical experience of the light, the mystical experience of the holy baptism, the sense of lightness and forgiveness? Is it necessary to have that tangible experience in this tangible world before one can begin taking awareness itself to be identity? Before one can begin to think out as awareness itself, as God awareness, does one have to have the mystical experience first? And the answer is absolutely not. Absolutely no. We take awareness to be the who and the what we are. God awareness to be the who and what we are. And we take it on faith if necessary. If it should be there is no conscious recognition of ever having felt the grand forgiveness or the peace, we take that identification on faith if necessary. We think out from, live out from, be out from the position of God awareness about the business of God being. And lo and behold, when we do, we find that all of the experiences of the many pathways begin to happen. Hand over fist, hard pressed, shaken together and running over, they happen. It's as though we had meditated for years and years and years with little or no results, when suddenly results happen. It's as though we had studied the Buddhist discipline or the Hindu discipline or the Taoist discipline to little or no avail, awaiting some grand road to Damascus enlightening experience that we could feel we were on our way. And lo and behold, it all happens. It happens quickly, without wait, without the long years of hard study, disappointing anticipation. It happens. We can take awareness right now to be the who and the what we are. And this is where we begin. This is the beginning the ancients spoke of. Blessed is he who has found the beginning. Let him stay there. Well, obviously, when one takes on a sense of a new identity, he has let go a false sense of identity. And here is where I find such weakness in the instruction that comes from our metaphysical philosophies. The term mortal mind is often used, but mortal mind is seldom defined, if ever. The term the old man is often used. Put off the old man. But just what do we mean by put off the old man? Churchdom has indicated that putting off the old man means simply getting rid of the bad habits of the old man, but it leaves the old man on the scene still, very purified, sanctified, sanctimonious, self-righteous old man, but he's still there on the scene, trying to equate himself with God. What is mortal mind that is put off? First, let me say this, that once we take awareness to be the identity we are, we have put off the old man. And let me explain just how this is so. Who is the one that feels he doesn't know? Who is the one who is forever searching after truth, seeking and finding? Who is the one who is trying to arrive at an altered state of consciousness that induces a sense of at-one-ment with God? It is the old man of us. The old man of us is the one, or the ego, or the role we play when we play the one to whom we believe awareness has been given. Now let me say that again. Right here, right now, here we sit listening. The concept that hangs in and lingers longest with us is that there is a me sitting here to whom this awareness that listens and thinks and feels has been given. There is a me who says, this awareness is mine. Well, there's no such me. There is no such ego to whom life has been given. But there is life present right here, right now. Awareness is present right here, right now. Awareness and life being the same thing as I use it here in this context. Awareness is here, yes. And there is the body that we say life has been put into or given to. A body that's stupid or that doesn't know, that's struggling and striving for a healing. Yes, but where does that body exist? Within awareness. Awareness, consciousness, is not in that body. Do you see? Awareness is going on right this minute. The ego, the old man, the liar from the beginning, the one that so tenaciously would mimic God in all ways, is a hypothetical ego that says, this awareness is mine. And I identify as the me who says, this awareness is mine. There is no such one. That is the old man. Now, to think out from the position of a me that says this awareness is mine, to think out from that position is to live mortal mind, to live a fraud, to live an identity or an ego that doesn't exist. Now, this idea is neither new nor unique with me. You've heard this many times in many ways from other places. It seems that it's a common statement that comes with enlightenment via whatever discipline that enlightenment appears to arrive. Catherine of Siena, one day after a period of introspective prayer and grand enlightenment, suddenly she arose and said, my me is God, nor do I see any other me but my God himself. Meaning that there is no personal identity to whom life has been given. And if we take it out of the religious context, the religious frame, Dr. Lang from England, world-noted psychiatrist, did a few months ago address a national meeting of the psychiatrists from all over the world and gave the keynote address. And to paraphrase very liberally, he did say, in effect, gentlemen, for all these years, we as psychiatrists have been trying to get at the root of human problems. And when we finally arrived at the root of a human problem, we then did all we could to heal that problem for the ego, so that the ego could go about its way unencumbered and unburdened by its previous burden. And then he said, but gentlemen, all of our study now indicates that there is no ego to heal. We've been spinning our wheels in the sand. We've been wasting time. Check me out on this and see. This is the Lang School of Psychiatry, coming on strong, saying that an ego doesn't even exist. And what again is ego? Ego, right here, right now, in its simplest terms, is the idea that this awareness, this life that is perceiving, and at the moment looking outside at a black walnut, just green with spring, and at pecan trees in the distance waving, this awareness that right now feels a chair beneath it, floor under its feet, that this awareness belongs to a me. Who is this me who says awareness is mine? There is no such me. And to let it go can be done effortlessly. In the same way one can let go the belief of a flat earth. We may base all of our calculations on the idea that the earth is flat, but the earth isn't flat, so we can let go the concept of it. We can let go the concept of a personal possessor of life. There is no such personal possessor of life, but life is right here, right on. Now this new view, this new sense of identification that automatically lets go an old sense of identification, doesn't alter anything at first. There are no great gongs going off or rockets flashing in the sky. There might be a grand warmness and gentleness in the heart when one suddenly realizes that identity is not sitting in a room, looking about at tables and chairs, or outside at squirrels, but that identity includes the room, the table, and the chairs, and the squirrels, squissels. I'm calling them squissels lately for some funny reason. We may very well joy in the expanded sense of identity as being infinitely more than we ever thought it was. But we still see trees. We still look down and see the fingers and toes of a sense of identity that we used to limit ourselves to, but we're infinitely more than that. Indeed, identity is all awareness perceives. And it is not the personal possession of Bill or Ruth or Mary or Jan. It is God's awareness, the divine mind's awareness. Infinite awareness is the identity one is. Eternal awareness is the identity one is. That position can be assumed right now, without wait, without struggle, because it's a fact right now. We don't have to wait until all the maps of the flat earth are reprinted, declaring that the earth wasn't flat but is round. We don't have to wait until all the printed material in the universe begins disclaiming the existence of ego, of a personal possessor of life. We can take that identity to be our own this moment, because it is who and what we are this moment. About this false sense of I, about this false identity. Just who is the one who struggles to understand the truth? He is always the one who says, I am aware. I am the one who possesses an awareness of my own. I am the possessor, the container of life. I am the one who looks at the sights and the sounds of my own awareness and then make my determinations about whether this is valuable or that is invaluable. This is good, that's bad, I like, I don't like. That's the one who struggles to understand. The one who struggles to understand says, I am the one who uses all of the sights and sounds within awareness in order to get along in the world, as though the sights and the sounds within awareness were separate and apart from him, as though he were one speck on the grand screen of awareness and the sights and sounds on the rest of the screen were separate and apart. Yes, separate and apart from the speck, from the I possess life, but not separate and apart from screen, the screen of awareness, God's comprehending going on, which is right now listening to these words. Who is the one who understands the truth? Inevitably, the one who understands the truth is the one who is simply being awareness itself, only, right now, and has let go the concept of being a little limited speck in space that possesses it, owns it, uses it. Well, now what does it require? What does it require to give up the possessor? Well, it is just as easy as letting go nothing, because that's what the possessor is, nothing. The possessor is a dream. The possessor is a belief that life is in matter. To stop being the possessor, to stop being him, is to stop doing those things the possessor does. And what's that? Well, the possessor is forever looking on the sights and sounds of awareness and saying, they're out there, they're not me. That's a tree over there, and I'm here, me, a body that weighs 150 pounds or some such thing as that. And how does one stop seeing things as outside himself when actually the view of things does not change a bit? How does one stop doing it? Well, to identify as awareness is so easy to say. Why? The tree I see is the tree I be. The tree is included within identity. And identity is this very awareness that is going on here and now. I identify as life living. And suddenly we find ourselves with a brotherhood never experienced before, never known before. Suddenly we see that all the people we see are but the infinite appearing of an infinite and eternal identity. All right, now it's been taught so often that to take this grand identity as oneself is to give up and lose the old personal sense of self. It is to lose one's ego, and that it melts into some grand charismatic light. Now, this is the charge often brought to bear against Eastern philosophies and sometimes brought to bear against Christian science. But it isn't so at all. Ego is still present to be seen within the grand scope of awareness, but it's understood for what it is. The grand scope of awareness still includes a tree and its shadow. And the shadow inevitably leads straight away to the tree. And awareness knows that tree is tree and shadow is shadow. So ego is still plainly evident to be seen. Ego, shadow that leads straight away to egolessness, or the divine ego that God is. And that God is God. And that ego is ego. Oh, it's very interesting to see how clearly one does begin to see when he identifies as awareness itself, life itself, and not as one who possesses life, and has it stuffed in his body like an apple in his pocket. Now listen gently. Right now, you hear a sound coming from a tape recorder. Perhaps you hear the sound of automobiles in the distance, or children playing. Isn't it possible to simply be the awareness within which this sounds, and the children laugh, and the automobiles in the distance sound? Isn't it possible to simply not be the one that says, this is my awareness? Oh, yes, it is possible. And to let go that me who says my is to let go the weight of Job, the weight of the world. Now, you know, folks, one must see this for oneself. And it isn't done with effort. You see, awareness is being aware whether we believe we are the possessors of awareness or not. We've believed that for such a long time, it sort of hangs in there like the smell of smoke. But to let go the possessor of awareness is effortless on the one hand, and yet it must be done, consciously done, but it's done with tenderness and love. It's done with gentleness, and it's done with a soft touch. You see, it's like opening one's eyes. It's like awakening. It's like relaxing, just relaxing, and letting go trials and tribulations. Letting them go to the wind. It's like opening one's hand and loosing and letting go a gas balloon with which we've been long enamored. It's like ending struggle. It's like going home to a warm and happy place. It's like coming home again, only to discover, why, this is where we've always been. This is what we've always been. We have always been just life, being life, living. We've always been awareness itself. There's never been a time or a situation, no matter how terrible it seemed, and no matter how pain-filled or grief-stricken it seemed, when life or awareness or consciousness wasn't just going right on being aware. We've always been aware of trees and children and the sounds of things. Awareness itself has just gone right on being aware. Oh, it has always been the one who says, this is my awareness. Who has been the one who suffered, who's been the great judge on the scene, who says, I don't like this sight and that sound. I want to get rid of this. I want to change that. I want this and that. It's always been this imposter who's been miserable or happy, according to how well things go in his little small frame of reference as to what's good and what's bad. That's the one. The possessor is the one that has always been engaged in such great, prodigious thought-taking and planning and calculating and arranging and rearranging. He's the one who created time, a time that was very necessary for his sequential events to transpire. And that imposter is that miserable one that we let go just as quickly as we take life, consciousness itself, to be the only identity in all existence. The only identity in all existence. I guess the most difficult thing I've found to communicate is the fact that there is but one awareness. I'm not the only one who has found it difficult. I have read countless instances where those who have made this simple, gentle, marvelous discovery that awareness is single, alone, only, and all, have found it relatively impossible to look out at that object within awareness, call people and say, listen, awareness is single, alone, only, and all. And then see what appear to be others understanding that. Most often, those who attempt to make this point are forced to give up, or else find themselves coming down from the position and reaching out and talking to others as though they could themselves perceive and understand, rather than just appear to.